The morning, Zelda Vaughn arrived in Hot Springs, New Mexico Territory, in the summer of 1878. She stepped off the stagecoach wearing black from head to toe and carrying a carpet bag that seemed too heavy for her slender frame. The driver helped her down, and the moment her boots touched the dusty street, a mirror in the general store across the way cracked straight down the middle with a sound like a pistol shot. She closed her eyes and whispered something under her breath that might have been a prayer or might have been a curse, then straightened her shoulders and walked toward the boarding house Mrs. Patterson had written about in her letter. Behind her, the stagecoach driver crossed himself and muttered to his companion about bad omens. Zelda was 22 years old and beautiful in a way that made people uncomfortable. Her dark hair fell in waves past her shoulders, and her green eyes held shadows that seemed older than her years. She had traveled alone from St. Louis, and every town between there and here had seen something break, spoil, or go wrong within hours of her arrival. A well went dry in Kansas. A barn burned in Colorado, though no one could explain how the fire started. A prize mare miscarried her foal in Santa Fe. She knew what people would say. They always said the same things. The boarding house was a narrow two-story building painted yellow, with a wide porch that offered shade from the relentless sun. Mrs. Patterson herself answered the door, a round woman in her 50s with flour dusting her apron and kindness in her eyes that did not quite mask her wariness. "Miss Vaughn?" she asked, though she must have known the answer. "Yes, madam. Thank you for accepting my reservation." Mrs. Patterson stepped aside to let her in. The interior was cool and smelled of baking bread. "Your room is upstairs, second door on the left. Supper is at 6. We have rules here about gentlemen callers and such." "That will not be an issue," Zelda said quietly. "I do not receive callers." Something in her tone made Mrs. Patterson's expression soften just a fraction. "Well, you are welcome here just the same. Let me help you with that bag." "No." Zelda pulled the carpet bag closer, then caught herself and added more gently, "Thank you, but I can manage. I prefer to carry it myself." She climbed the narrow stairs, found her room, and closed the door behind her with a sigh that seemed to come from the depths of her soul. The room was simple but clean, with a bed covered in a patchwork quilt, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the main street of Hot Springs. Zelda set her carpet bag on the bed and opened it carefully. Inside, wrapped in layers of cloth, were the remnants of her old life. A silver locket that had belonged to her mother, a Bible with her family name written on the first page, and a letter, creased and worn from being folded and unfolded 100 times, written in her grandmother's shaking hand just before she died. The letter explained everything and nothing. It spoke of a curse placed on their family 3 generations ago, back in the old country. It told of how every woman in their line had brought misfortune to those around them, how they had been shunned and feared, how some had been driven out of their homes or worse. Her grandmother had come to America hoping to escape it, but the curse had followed like a shadow. "It lives in your blood," the letter said. "It feeds on your fear and grows stronger with your despair. I have tried everything to break it, but I am old and my time is short. Perhaps you will have better fortune. Perhaps you will find what I could not." Zelda had asked her grandmother what she meant by that, but the old woman had died that same night, whispering words in a language Zelda did not understand. That had been 3 months ago. Since then, Zelda had left St. Louis, where her presence had caused too many accidents, too much suspicion. She had thought distance might help, that starting fresh in a place where no one knew her might somehow diminish the curse's power. But every town told the same story. Bad luck followed her like a faithful dog. She had come to Hot Springs because it was small and remote, because she hoped she might hide here for a while before the inevitable happened, and she would have to move on again. The town existed primarily because of the natural hot springs that gave it its name, which people claimed had healing properties. Zelda found that bitterly ironic. She brought sickness, not healing. A knock on the door startled her from her thoughts. "Miss Vaughn." "There is a gentleman downstairs asking to see you." Zelda's heart sank. It was starting already. "Tell him I am not receiving visitors. He says it is about employment. He heard you might be looking for work." Zelda had mentioned to Mrs. Patterson that she would need to find a position of some kind, though she had not expected anyone to come calling so soon. She had planned to wait a few days, to let the town grow accustomed to her presence before she tried to find work. But perhaps it was better to get it over with. She descended the stairs to find a tall man waiting in the parlor, hat in hand. He was perhaps 30 years old, with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of a summer sky. He wore the clothes of a working cowboy, denim trousers and a cotton shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, boots that had seen hard use. But there was something in his bearing that suggested he was more than just a ranch hand. "Miss Vaughn," he said, and his voice was deep and steady. "My name is Vincent Walker. I own a ranch about 5 miles outside of town. I heard you might be looking for work, and I find myself in need of someone to help keep house and cook for me and my men." Zelda studied him carefully. "Who told you I was looking for work, Mrs.? Patterson mentioned it to her husband, who mentioned it to the postmaster, who mentioned it to me. Small town." He offered a slight smile. "Word travels fast. I see." She folded her hands in front of her. "And you came all the way into town to offer me a position before anyone else could?" "I did." "Why?" The question seemed to surprise him. "Because I need help. My last housekeeper left 2 weeks ago to care for her sick mother in Texas, and the house is starting to show it. The men are grumbling about the food. I am not much of a cook myself." There was something straightforward about him that Zelda found both appealing and troubling. She wanted to warn him, to tell him that hiring her would be a mistake, that bad things happened around her. But she also needed the work, and there was a practical limit to how much truth one could speak without sounding insane. "I should tell you," she began carefully, "that my previous positions did not always end well. Through no fault of my own, but circumstances arose that made it necessary for me to leave." Vincent considered this. "What kind of circumstances?" "Unfortunate ones." She met his eyes directly. "I seem to bring bad luck with me, Mr. Walker. Things break, animals sicken, crops fail. I do not understand why, but it has been true my whole life. If you hire me, you may come to regret it." She expected him to make excuses and leave, as others had done when she had tried to warn them. Instead, he surprised her by laughing, not unkindly. "Miss Vaughn, I have been running a ranch in New Mexico Territory for 8 years. I have survived drought, dust storms, cattle rustlers, a broken leg that healed crooked, and more near misses with rattlesnakes than I care to count. I do not put much stock in luck, good or bad. I believe a person makes their own fortune through hard work and good decisions. I have made plenty of good decisions," Zelda said quietly. "It has not helped. Then maybe it is time to try something different." He put his hat back on. "The position pays $30 a month plus room and board. You would have your own cabin near the main house. The work is hard but honest. I have 6 men working for me, and they are all good fellows who will treat you with respect or answer to me. If you are interested, I can take you out to see the place tomorrow." Zelda wanted to say no. Every instinct told her that getting close to people, letting them depend on her, only ended in disaster. But she was nearly out of money, and winter would come eventually even to New Mexico. She needed this job, and more than that, she found herself wanting to believe Vincent Walker's words about making your own fortune. "I will come see it," she said finally, "but I make no promises beyond that." "Fair enough. I will pick you up at 8 tomorrow morning." He nodded politely and turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Miss Vaughn, that business about bad luck, I hope you will find that none of that matters much out at the ranch. We are too busy for superstition." After he left, Zelda stood in the parlor for a long time, listening to the sounds of the town outside. She heard wagons passing, dogs barking, someone playing a fiddle in the saloon down the street. Normal sounds, peaceful sounds. She wondered how long it would last. That night, a summer storm rolled in with unusual violence. Lightning struck the church steeple, though it did not catch fire. The wind tore shingles from roofs and overturned an outhouse behind the general store. Mrs. Patterson's other boarders whispered that it was strange, that such storms were rare this time of year, that it had been a clear day until evening. Zelda lay in her narrow bed and listened to the thunder, feeling the familiar weight of guilt settle over her like a shroud. She had brought this. She always brought this. She thought about packing her bag and leaving before morning, before she could do more damage, before Vincent Walker could come to collect her and bring her out to his ranch, where her curse would no doubt destroy everything he had worked for. But when morning came, bright and clear as if the storm had never happened, she was still there. Some stubborn part of her, the part that had kept her going through years of exile and loneliness, refused to run. Not yet. Not without at least trying one more time. Vincent arrived promptly at 8, driving a wagon with 2 sturdy horses. He helped Zelda up to the seat beside him, and they headed out of town on a dusty road that wound through scrubland dotted with juniper and pinon. The morning was already hot, the sky a pale blue dome overhead. "How long have you lived in Hot Springs?" Zelda asked, more to fill the silence than from real curiosity. "I do not live in town. The ranch keeps me busy enough that I only come in for supplies and church on Sunday. But I have been in the area for 8 years, like I said. Came out here after the war." Zelda did some quick mental arithmetic. He would have been young during the war, maybe 20 or 21. "Which side?" "Union. New York Regiment. I saw enough fighting to last a lifetime, so when it was over, I headed west looking for peace and quiet." He glanced at her. "What about you? Where are you from originally?" "St. Louis most recently. But my family came from Pennsylvania before that, and before that somewhere in Europe. We have moved around a lot." Running from something, the question was too perceptive. Zelda looked away. "You could say that." They rode in silence for a while. The landscape gradually changed as they climbed into higher country. The scrubland gave way to grassland, and Zelda could see cattle grazing in the distance, dark shapes against the golden grass. Mountains rose to the east, their peaks still holding snow despite the summer heat. "It is beautiful," she said softly, and meant it. "It is. That is why I stayed." Vincent pointed ahead. "There, that is the ranch." The main house was a long, low building made of adobe, with a covered porch running along the front. Behind it were several outbuildings, including a barn, a bunkhouse, and a smaller cabin set slightly apart. Corrals held more horses, and chickens scratched in the yard. It was clearly a working ranch, practical and unadorned, but there was something solid about it that appealed to Zelda. 3 men were working near the barn, mending a fence. They looked up as the wagon approached, and Zelda felt their curious stares. She was used to being stared at. It was what came after the staring that worried her. Vincent helped her down from the wagon and called to the men. "Come on over and meet Miss Vaughn. If she agrees, she will be taking over the cooking and housekeeping." The 3 men approached, removing their hats. The oldest was perhaps 40, with gray threading through his dark hair. The other two were younger, probably in their 20s. They introduced themselves as Charlie, Tom, and Will, and they were polite enough, though Zelda could see the questions in their eyes. "Where are the other three?" Vincent asked Charlie. "Out checking the north fence line. Should be back by evening." "All right. I am going to show Miss Vaughn the house and the cabin. Get back to work." The men dispersed, though Zelda caught them glancing back as Vincent led her toward the main house. Inside, it was cooler, the thick adobe walls keeping out the worst of the heat. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a large table, a cookstove, and a few simple chairs. Everything was dusty and slightly chaotic, the domain of men who had been without a woman's touch for too long. "I know it is a mess," Vincent said apologetically. "Like I said, we have been managing on our own for 2 weeks, and none of us are much good at it." "It is not so bad," Zelda said, though in truth it would take days of hard work to get it properly clean. "I have seen worse." He showed her the rest of the house, which included a small office where he kept his accounts and 2 bedrooms. Then they walked over to the cabin, which was a single room with a bed, a small stove, and a table. It was simple but private, and the window looked out over the grassland toward the mountains. "You would have your meals in the main house, but this would be your space," Vincent explained. "The men know to respect that. Anyone who does not confine work elsewhere." Zelda walked slowly around the cabin, taking it in. It was more than she had expected, more than she deserved. "Why are you being so generous?" "It is not generosity. It is practicality. If I want good help, I need to offer good conditions. Too many ranchers treat their workers like cattle, then wonder why they cannot keep anyone." He leaned against the door frame, watching her. "So what do you say? Will you take the position?" She wanted to. Standing in that small cabin, looking out at the vast landscape beyond, she wanted it more than she had wanted anything in a long time, but the fear was still there, cold and familiar. "What if I am right?" she asked quietly. "What if bad things start happening? What if your cattle sicken, or your well runs dry, or worse?" Vincent was quiet for a moment, then he walked over to stand beside her at the window. "Then we will deal with it. That is what you do on a ranch. Things go wrong all the time. You fix what you can and endure what you cannot. It is not magic or curses. It is just life. You do not understand. Maybe not. But I understand that you are standing here trying to talk me out of hiring you, which tells me you are honest. I understand that you traveled all the way from St. Louis alone, which tells me you are brave. And I understand that you need this work, and I need help. Everything else is just details." Zelda turned to look at him, searching his face for signs of mockery or hidden cruelty, but found only patient sincerity. It was so unexpected that she felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them away quickly. "All right," she said, "I will try. But if things start to go wrong, I will leave. I will not stay and let my curse destroy what you have built here." "Fair enough." He offered his hand to shake, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. His grip was warm and calloused, the hand of someone who worked hard for a living. "Welcome to the Walking W Ranch, Miss Vaughn." They drove back to town so Zelda could collect her things. The ride was easier this time, with the tension of uncertainty lifted. Vincent told her about the ranch, about the challenges of raising cattle in New Mexico territory, about his hopes to expand his herd in the coming years. He spoke with a quiet passion that made it clear how much the ranch meant to him. "My father was a merchant in New York," he said. "A good man, but he lived his whole life in the same 10 blocks of the city. I wanted something different. I wanted space and air and work that meant something. Out here, what you do matters. You take care of the land and the animals, and they take care of you. It is simple in a way that makes sense to me. Were your parents upset when you came west?" My father died at Gettysburg. My mother died of fever the winter after. I had a sister, but she married a shopkeeper in Boston. We write sometimes, but we have gone different ways." He paused. "I am sorry." "That was probably more than you wanted to know." "No," I asked. Zelda found herself genuinely interested. "Do you ever miss it? New York?" "Sometimes I miss the noise, if you can believe that. Out at the ranch, it gets so quiet at night you can hear your own heartbeat." "Took me a long time to get used to that." He smiled. "But I would not go back. This is home now." They reached Hot Springs, and Vincent waited while Zelda paid Mrs. Patterson for the single night and collected her carpet bag. The older woman looked relieved to see her go, though she tried to hide it. Zelda did not blame her. She had probably heard about the storm. The ride back to the ranch seemed shorter. They arrived in the early afternoon, and Vincent showed Zelda to the cabin, then left her to settle in while he went back to work. She unpacked her few belongings, made up the bed with the fresh linens he had provided, and sat for a moment on the edge of the mattress, trying to absorb the fact that she had a place to live, work to do, a chance at something resembling a normal life. It would not last. She knew that. But for now, just for this moment, she let herself hope. That evening, she cooked her first meal for the men. The kitchen was better stocked than she had expected, and she managed to put together a decent supper of beef stew, cornbread, and dried apple pie. The 6 ranch hands came in dusty and tired, and their faces lit up when they saw real food on the table. "Madam, if you can cook like this regular, you are going to spoil us," Charlie said, shoveling stew into his mouth with obvious pleasure. "She might actually keep us from starving," Tom added. "Boss has been making us eat his cooking, and I swear it was going to kill us." Vincent threw a piece of cornbread at him, which Tom caught and ate with a grin. The easy camaraderie between them made Zelda smile despite herself. These were good men, the kind who worked hard and joked with each other and did not seem inclined toward meanness. After supper, she cleaned up while the men went back to the bunkhouse or out to tend the animals. Vincent stayed, drying dishes while she washed them. "You did not have to help," she said, "I know. But I wanted to tell you that you did well today. The men liked you, and that matters. A ranch runs better when everyone gets along." "I like them too," Zelda admitted. "They seem like good people. They are. I have been lucky with my crew." He put away the last plate and hung the towel to dry. "Get some rest. Tomorrow will be another long day." That night, Zelda lay in her narrow bed in the cabin and listened to the silence Vincent had mentioned. He was right. It was profound, almost overwhelming after a lifetime of living in cities and towns where there was always noise. But there was something peaceful about it too, something that eased the constant tension she carried in her shoulders. She fell asleep thinking that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. The first week passed without incident. Zelda fell into a rhythm of work that was exhausting but satisfying. She rose before dawn to start breakfast, spent her mornings cleaning and organizing the main house, cooked a large midday meal, and spent her afternoons doing laundry, mending clothes, and preparing supper. The work was hard, but it was honest, and at the end of each day she could see what she had accomplished. The men appreciated her efforts. The house became cleaner, the meals improved, and morale noticeably lifted. Even Vincent, who seemed naturally inclined to understatement, told her she was doing a fine job. But Zelda waited for the other shoe to drop. She watched the cattle for signs of illness, checked the sky for storms, listened for news of accidents or misfortune. Every night, she expected Vincent to come to her cabin and tell her it was not working out, that she needed to leave. But he never did. By the second week, she began to relax slightly. The ranch work continued without disaster. The weather stayed fair. The cattle remained healthy. It was so unusual that Zelda did not know what to make of it. Her whole life, bad luck had followed her like a shadow. But here, under the vast New Mexico sky, nothing terrible was happening. She mentioned it to Vincent one evening as they sat on the porch of the main house, watching the sun set over the mountains. It had become their habit to talk for a few minutes after supper, before she retired to her cabin, and he went to do a final check of the property. "Do you think it is possible for a curse to simply stop working?" she asked. Vincent considered the question seriously, which she appreciated. He never dismissed her concerns as foolishness, even though he clearly did not believe in curses himself. "I think it is possible that what you thought was a curse was really just a string of bad luck," he said carefully. "And luck changes. Maybe you just needed a change of place, a fresh start somewhere people were not already expecting the worst from you. You think it was all in my head." "I think expectation is powerful. If everyone around you is watching for bad things to happen and blaming you when they do, that can feel like a curse even if it is not one. People see what they expect to see." Zelda wanted to believe him, but years of experience told a different story. "What about the mirror in town? That broke the moment I arrived before anyone could expect anything. Mirrors break. Maybe it had a crack already that finally gave way. Maybe the temperature changed when you opened the door." He looked at her with those steady blue eyes. "I am not saying you are wrong to believe what you believe. I am just saying there might be other explanations. You are very rational. I try to be. Life is complicated enough without adding spirits and curses to the mix." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the light fade from the sky. Zelda found herself thinking that she could get used to this, these quiet evenings with a man who listened when she spoke and did not treat her like she was crazy or dangerous. It was more than she had hoped for. "Why did you never marry?" she asked, then immediately regretted the personal question. "I am sorry, that is none of my business. It is all right, the answer is simple enough. I have not found the right woman yet." He smiled slightly. "Or maybe the right woman has not been willing to put up with a stubborn rancher who lives in the middle of nowhere. That might be closer to the truth." "I find that hard to believe. You are a good man, Vincent. Any woman would be lucky to have you." The words were out before she could stop them, and she felt her cheeks burn. Vincent looked surprised, then pleased. "That is kind of you to say." His voice was gentle. "But I could say the same about you. Why has no man convinced you to settle down?" Now it was Zelda's turn to feel exposed. "Because I have spent my whole life being afraid of hurting people. How could I let someone get close when I believed I would only bring them misery? And now I do not know what to think. Nothing bad has happened since I came here. Either the curse is not real, like you say, or something about this place is different. Either way, I feel like I can breathe for the first time in years." Vincent reached over and took her hand, the gesture simple and natural. "Then breathe. Stop waiting for disaster. Just live your life." His hand was warm around hers, calloused and strong. Zelda looked down at their joined hands and felt something shift inside her chest, a crack in the walls she had built around her heart. It terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. "I will try," she whispered. The third week brought the first real test. One of the ranch hands, a young man named Will, fell from his horse while chasing a stray calf and broke his arm. It was a clean break, and Charlie, who had some experience with such things, set it and splinted it properly. Will would heal fine, but he was out of commission for several weeks. Zelda's first thought was that it had started. The curse had found her even here, and now the accidents would multiply until Vincent had no choice but to send her away. She went to her cabin and sat on the edge of the bed, fighting tears and panic in equal measure. There was a knock on the door. Vincent's voice came through. "Zelda, can I come in?" She wiped her eyes and opened the door. He stood there looking tired but not angry, not accusing, just concerned. "I know what you are thinking," he said without preamble, "but this was not your fault. Will got careless. He was riding too fast and not paying attention. It could have happened any time. But it happened now while I am here." "Yes, while you are here. Also while 6 other people are here, and 100 head of cattle, and the sun is shining and the grass is growing. That does not mean you caused it." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Zelda, you have to stop blaming yourself for every bad thing that happens. It is not healthy and it is not rational. Rational does not matter when it comes to curses. There is no curse." He said it more forcefully than usual, then caught himself and softened his tone. "I am sorry. But I have watched you these past weeks, and you are driving yourself crazy with this fear. You are a good person. You work hard. You are kind to everyone. Why can you not believe that you deserve good things?" "Because experience has taught me otherwise." Zelda's voice broke. "Do you know what it is like to live your whole life knowing that people you care about will suffer because of you? To always be alone because letting anyone close is dangerous. I have been carrying this weight since I was old enough to understand what it meant, and I cannot just set it down because you tell me to." Vincent was quiet for a moment. Then he did something unexpected. He pulled her into his arms, holding her gently but firmly, letting her sob against his chest while he stroked her hair. "Then let me help you carry it," he said quietly. "You do not have to be alone anymore. You have people here who care about you. I care about you. And I am not going to let you run away over a broken arm that had nothing to do with you." Zelda clung to him, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady beating of his heart. Part of her wanted to push him away, to protect him from what she might bring down on his head. But a larger part, the part that had been starving for human connection for so long, could not bear to let go. "I do not want to hurt you," she whispered. "You will not. I promise you that." He pulled back just enough to look at her face, using his thumb to wipe away her tears. "Trust me. Just for a little while, trust that maybe I am right and you are wrong. Can you do that?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. He smiled and kissed her forehead, a gesture so tender it made her heart ache. "Good. Now come on. Tom made coffee, and if we do not drink it quickly, it will burn through the pot." The joke made her laugh despite everything, and she let him lead her back to the main house. The men were there, looking worried until they saw her. Then they relaxed and went back to their coffee and conversation, including her easily in their circle. Will sat with his splinted arm across his lap, looking sheepish. "Sorry for scaring everyone, madam," he said. "I was being an idiot." "You were," Charlie agreed, "but you will heal up fine. Just gives me an excuse to make you do all the easy jobs for a while." The men laughed, and the tension dissipated. Zelda sat and accepted a cup of the terrible coffee and felt something warm spread through her chest. These people did not blame her. They did not fear her. They just accepted her as one of them. Maybe Vincent was right. Maybe it really was that simple. The weeks turned into a month, then 2. Summer deepened and ripened, the days long and hot, the nights cool and star-filled. The work continued, endless and satisfying. Will's arm healed. The cattle grew fat on the good grass. The ranch prospered, and Zelda began to change. It was subtle at first, small things like smiling more often or sleeping better at night. But gradually, the constant tension that had defined her life began to ease. She laughed at the men's jokes. She sang while she worked. She started to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could have a normal life. Her relationship with Vincent deepened too. They spent more time together, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about his dreams for the ranch, about the places he had seen during the war and after, about the books he read and the ideas he had. She told him about her family, about the grandmother who had tried so hard to break the curse, about the loneliness that had shaped her life. He never treated her like she was fragile or broken. He challenged her, made her laugh, showed her that she was stronger than she thought. And slowly, inevitably, she fell in love with him. She did not mean to. She had told herself it was impossible, that even if the curse was not real, she was too damaged for love. But Vincent made it easy. He was patient and kind and utterly reliable, the kind of man who did what he said he would do and said what he meant. Around him, she felt safe in a way she had never experienced before. One evening in late August, they were walking back from checking on a pregnant cow when Vincent took her hand. It was not the first time he had done so, but this time felt different, more deliberate. He stopped walking and turned to face her, the setting sun painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson behind him. "Zelda, I need to tell you something," he said, his voice serious. Her heart jumped into her throat. "What is it?" "I am in love with you. I have been for weeks, maybe since the first day I met you. I know this might be too soon, and if you need time, I understand. But I cannot keep it to myself anymore. You should know how I feel." Zelda stared at him, her mind racing. This was what she had wanted and feared in equal measure. The idea that someone could love her, could choose her despite everything, was almost too much to process. "Vincent, she stopped, struggling for words. "I care about you too. More than I can say, but I am so afraid. What if the curse is real? What if loving me brings disaster down on you? Then we will face it together." He cupped her face in his hands, looking at her with such intensity it took her breath away. "I have thought about this, Zelda. I have thought about all your fears and all the things you believe about yourself, and none of it changes how I feel. I want you in my life, curse or no curse. I want to wake up next to you and build a future together. I want everything with you." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "You do not know what you are asking for." "Yes, I do. I am asking you to take a chance on happiness. I am asking you to believe that maybe, just this once, things can work out." He smiled, gentle and sure. "I am asking you to marry me, Zelda Vaughn. Will you?" The word caught in her throat. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to protect him, to run before her curse could destroy him. But looking into his eyes, seeing the love and certainty there, she felt something inside her give way. The walls she had built, the fear she had carried for so long, crumbled under the weight of his conviction. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder, "Yes, Vincent, I will marry you." He kissed her then, tender and sweet, and Zelda felt the world shift around them. This was the moment, she thought distantly. This was when the curse would manifest, when lightning would strike or the earth would open or something terrible would happen to punish her for daring to be happy. But nothing happened. The sun continued its slow descent. A hawk cried overhead. The wind whispered through the grass. Everything was normal, peaceful, beautiful. Vincent pulled back, grinning like a boy. "You just made me the happiest man in New Mexico." "I hope I do not make you the unluckiest," she said, but she was smiling too. "Not possible. Marrying you is the best luck I could ask for." They walked back to the ranch hand in hand, and when they told the men the news, there was cheering and backslapping and genuine joy. Charlie produced a bottle of whiskey that he had been saving for a special occasion, and they all toasted the engagement under the stars. That night, lying in her cabin, Zelda felt something she had not felt in years. Hope. Real, honest hope that her life could be more than just running and hiding and waiting for the next disaster. Vincent loved her, and she loved him, and somehow that seemed to matter more than any curse. They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in Hot Springs. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, attended by Vincent's ranch hands, a few townspeople who had gotten to know Zelda in the intervening months, and Mrs. Patterson, who cried throughout the entire service. Zelda wore a dress that Mrs. Patterson had helped her make, simple white cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs. Vincent wore his best suit, and he looked so handsome standing at the altar that Zelda felt her heart might burst from the sheer, overwhelming emotion of it all. The preacher was an elderly man named Reverend Matthews who had kind eyes and a gentle manner. He spoke about love and commitment, about building a life together on faith and trust. When he asked Vincent if he took Zelda to be his lawfully wedded wife, Vincent's "I do" rang out clear and strong. When it was Zelda's turn, she hesitated for just a moment, old fears rising up one last time. She looked at Vincent and saw nothing but love and encouragement in his eyes. She thought about the past months, about how her life had changed, about how the curse seemed to have lost its power here in this wild, beautiful place with this good, steady man. "I do," she said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Vincent did, pulling her close and kissing her in front of everyone, a kiss that promised forever. The small congregation applauded, and Zelda felt tears of joy stream down her face. They held a simple reception at the ranch, with food that Zelda and Mrs. Patterson had prepared the day before. There was music and dancing and laughter that echoed across the grassland. The ranch hands had strung up lanterns, and as night fell, the place took on a magical quality like something from a dream. Vincent pulled Zelda aside at one point, away from the crowd, and they stood together looking up at the stars. "Are you happy?" he asked softly. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she answered honestly. "Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for making me believe. You did that yourself. I just gave you a reason to try." He kissed her temple. "I love you, Zelda Walker. I am going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt that. I love you too. More than words can say." They stood there for a long time, holding each other under the vast New Mexico sky, and Zelda felt something inside her finally settle. The fear that had haunted her for so long, the belief that she was cursed and dangerous and unworthy of love, began to fade. In its place grew something new: peace, belonging, home. The next morning they woke up together in the main house in what was now their shared bedroom. Sunlight streamed through the window, painting everything gold. Vincent's arm was draped over her waist, and she could hear his slow, steady breathing. She turned carefully to look at him, studying his face in sleep. He looked younger like this, the lines of worry and responsibility smoothed away. She marveled that this man was her husband, that she had somehow been lucky enough to find him. As if sensing her gaze, Vincent opened his eyes and smiled. "Good morning, wife. Good morning, husband." The words felt strange and wonderful on her tongue. They lay there for a while, talking quietly about their plans for the day, for the future. Vincent wanted to expand the ranch, maybe buy the land to the north that was coming up for sale. Zelda talked about planting a garden near the house, about maybe getting some chickens and a milk cow. Ordinary plans, the kind normal married couples made. It was everything she had ever wanted. Life settled into a new rhythm after the wedding. Zelda continued to run the household, but now she did it as Vincent's wife rather than his employee. It was a subtle distinction, but an important one. She felt more invested in the ranch's success, more willing to offer opinions and suggestions. Vincent valued her input and often asked for her thoughts on various matters, treating her as a true partner. The ranch prospered. The fall roundup yielded good numbers, and Vincent was able to sell his cattle for a fair price. With the money, he bought the northern land he had wanted, expanding the Walking W Ranch significantly. The men were happy, the work was steady, and life was good. As winter approached, Zelda realized she had been living at the ranch for nearly 6 months without a single disaster. No storms, no sickness, no accidents beyond the usual minor scrapes that came with ranch work. It seemed impossible, but the evidence was undeniable. Whatever curse she had believed in, it was not affecting her life here. One evening in November, as they sat by the fire in the main house, she brought it up to Vincent. "You remember when I told you I was cursed?" she asked. "I remember." He looked up from the account book he was reviewing. "Why?" "I have been thinking about it. Nothing bad has happened since I came here. Either the curse was never real or something broke it. I am starting to think you were right all along. Maybe it was just bad luck and people's expectations." Vincent set aside his book and pulled her close. "Does it matter anymore? Either way, you are free of it now. You can live your life without that fear hanging over you." "It matters because I wasted so many years believing I was cursed. I pushed people away. I ran from place to place. I made myself miserable over something that might not have even been real. I could have had this happiness years ago if I had just been brave enough to try. Or maybe you needed those years to become the person who could accept this happiness," Vincent suggested gently. "Everything that happened brought you here to this place to me. I cannot regret that, and neither should you." Zelda thought about that. He had a point. If she had not left St. Louis, if she had not come to Hot Springs looking for a fresh start, she would never have met Vincent. All the pain and loneliness had led her here to this moment, to this man who loved her despite everything. "You always know what to say," she murmured, snuggling against his chest. "I just tell the truth as I see it." He kissed the top of her head. "Speaking of which, there is something I need to tell you." "What?" "I have been waiting for the right moment, but there never seems to be a perfect time, so I will just say it. Zelda, I want to have children with you. A whole house full of them if we are blessed. I want to build a life and a legacy with you. What do you think about that?" Zelda's breath caught. Children. She had never let herself think about having children, had assumed it was impossible for someone like her. But now, with the curse seemingly broken and a good man by her side, the idea filled her with longing. "I would like that," she said softly. "I would like that very much. But what if," she stopped, old fears surfacing. "What if nothing?" Vincent interrupted firmly. "We are going to have a family, and they are going to be healthy and happy, and you are going to be an amazing mother. No more what ifs, just faith." She nodded, blinking back tears. "Just faith." Winter came to the ranch, bringing cold winds and occasional snow. The work slowed but never stopped. There were always animals to tend, repairs to make, preparations for spring. Zelda learned to live with the rhythm of ranch life, the way the seasons dictated everything. On Christmas, they had a celebration with all the ranch hands. Zelda cooked a feast, and they exchanged simple gifts. Vincent gave her a beautiful shawl he had ordered from a catalog, soft wool dyed deep blue. She gave him a new hat that she had saved up to buy on one of their trips to town. It was a happy, peaceful day. As the year turned and 1879 began, Zelda discovered she was pregnant. She told Vincent on a cold January morning, nervous about his reaction despite his earlier words about wanting children. She need not have worried. His face lit up with such joy that she found herself laughing and crying at the same time. He spun her around the kitchen, then immediately set her down and apologized, worried he had been too rough. "I am not made of glass," she protested, still laughing. "The baby will be fine." "Our baby," he said wonderingly. "We are going to have a baby." The men were delighted when they heard the news. Charlie, who had grown children of his own back east, offered advice that was probably more embarrassing than helpful. Tom and Will started arguing about whether it would be a boy or a girl and what they should name it. Even the more reserved ranch hands offered their congratulations. Mrs. Patterson, when she heard during one of Zelda's trips to town, cried and hugged her and declared it the best news she had heard all year. The townspeople who had once been wary of Zelda now welcomed her warmly, their suspicions long since forgotten. The pregnancy was not easy. Zelda suffered from morning sickness that lasted well into the afternoon, and as she grew larger, the simple tasks of daily life became more challenging. But Vincent was endlessly patient and supportive. He took over more of the heavy work, encouraged her to rest when she needed to, and told her every day how beautiful she looked. "I look like a barn," she complained one evening in June, looking down at her swollen belly. "You look like the woman I love carrying our child," Vincent corrected. "The most beautiful sight in the world." Despite her physical discomfort, Zelda was happier than she had ever been. The baby kicked and moved inside her, a constant reminder of the new life they had created together. She spent her evenings knitting blankets and tiny clothes, dreaming about the future. The baby came in late July, during a hot spell that made everyone miserable. The labor was long and hard, attended by Mrs. Patterson, who had experience as a midwife. Vincent waited outside, pacing like a caged animal, while inside, Zelda fought the hardest battle of her life. When it was finally over and Mrs. Patterson placed a squalling, red-faced baby in her arms, Zelda felt a love so overwhelming it dwarfed everything she had ever felt before. She counted tiny fingers and toes, marveled at the delicate perfection of her son, and cried tears of pure joy. Vincent came in, his face pale with worry, and stopped dead when he saw them. "Is he all right? Are you all right?" "We are perfect," Zelda assured him, her voice hoarse from hours of labor. "Come meet your son." He approached almost reverently and looked down at the baby with an expression of awe. "He is so small, he will grow." She shifted the baby so Vincent could see him better. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names for months but never quite decided. Now, looking at their son, Vincent said, "Daniel, after my father, Daniel Walker. What do you think?" "I think it is perfect." Zelda looked down at Daniel, who had stopped crying and was making little snuffling noises. "Welcome to the world, Daniel Walker. You are so loved." The first year of Daniel's life was exhausting and wonderful. Zelda learned how to care for an infant while still managing the household, though Vincent and the men all helped more than she expected. Charlie turned out to be surprisingly good with babies and often volunteered to rock Daniel to sleep so Zelda could get some rest. The ranch continued to thrive. Vincent hired 2 more men to help with the expanding operation, good workers who fit in well with the existing crew. The cattle herd grew, the land proved fertile, and everything they touched seemed to prosper. On their second wedding anniversary, Vincent gave Zelda a necklace with a small pendant shaped like a star. "For guiding me home," he said as he fastened it around her neck. She touched the pendant, feeling the tears rise. "You saved me, Vincent. You gave me a life I never thought I could have." "We saved each other," he corrected. "And this is just the beginning. We have decades ahead of us, you and me and Daniel and whoever else joins our family." "I cannot wait to see what comes next." What came next was another baby, a daughter they named Sarah, born 2 years after Daniel. Then another son, Thomas, 2 years after that. The house filled with noise and laughter, and the chaos of raising children, and Zelda thrived in ways she had never imagined possible. The curse, if it had ever truly existed, was nothing but a distant memory now. Sometimes, late at night, Zelda would think about her grandmother's letter and wonder what had really happened. Had the curse been real and somehow broken? Or had Vincent been right all along, that it was only ever fear and expectation? She decided it did not matter. What mattered was that she was happy, surrounded by people she loved who loved her in return. She had built a life she was proud of, raised children who would never know the fear and loneliness that had defined her early years. She had found home. Vincent grew older gracefully, his hair turning gray at the temples, lines deepening around his eyes from years of squinting into the sun. But he was still strong, still steady, still the man who had looked at a frightened young woman and offered her a chance at redemption. On quiet evenings, they would sit on the porch of the main house, watching their children play in the yard and talking about everything and nothing. These were Zelda's favorite times, when the work was done and the world was peaceful, and she could simply exist beside the man she loved. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked him once. "Marrying me, I mean. Taking a chance on someone with so much baggage." Vincent looked at her with those steady blue eyes, older now but no less certain. "Never, not for one moment. You were the best decision I ever made. Even though I was convinced I was cursed, especially because of that. It means you chose to trust me despite your fear. That is braver than anything I have ever done." He reached over and took her hand. "Besides, if you were cursed, then I guess I am the lucky cowboy who broke the spell with a kiss, just like in a fairy tale." Zelda laughed, remembering that first kiss outside the church in Hot Springs, how terrified and hopeful she had been. "Is that what you think you did? Broke the spell?" "Maybe. Or maybe you broke it yourself by deciding to believe in happiness. Either way, we won." He raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "We won, Zelda. We got everything we wanted." She leaned against his shoulder, watching the sun set over the mountains in shades of orange and purple and gold. Their children's laughter rang out across the yard. The cattle lowed peacefully in the distance. A evening breeze carried the scent of grass and sage. "Yes," she agreed softly. "We did." The years continued to pass, bringing change and growth. Daniel grew into a capable young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did, and was clearly being groomed to take it over someday. Sarah was bright and curious, always reading and asking questions about everything. Thomas was the wild one, always getting into mischief but with a heart of gold. The ranch expanded further. Vincent and Zelda bought more land, built a larger barn, increased the herd. The Walking W became one of the most successful ranches in the territory, but success never changed Vincent. He remained humble and hardworking, treating everyone fairly, living by the values he had always held. Zelda's reputation in Hot Springs evolved too. She was no longer the mysterious woman in black who had arrived under a cloud of superstition. She was Mrs. Walker, the rancher's wife, a respected member of the community who helped organize church functions and looked after neighbors in need. The town had grown around her, and she had grown with it. Sometimes people new to town would hear old stories about the cursed woman and the accidents that followed her, but they seemed like ancient history now, fairy tales that had no bearing on reality. Zelda Walker was just a woman, a wife, a mother, normal in all the ways that mattered. But Zelda never forgot. She remembered the fear and loneliness, the years of running and hiding. She remembered the day Vincent Walker had offered her a job and refused to believe in curses. She remembered how he had loved her when she could not love herself, how he had given her the courage to reach for happiness. And she remembered her grandmother's letter, still kept in a drawer in their bedroom, its pages yellowed with age. "Perhaps you will find what I could not," her grandmother had written. Zelda had found it. She had found love, and in doing so, she had broken every spell that bound her. One spring evening, when Zelda was in her 40s and Vincent's hair had gone completely gray, they stood together on the porch watching a storm roll in from the west. Lightning flickered in the clouds, and thunder rumbled in the distance, but it was far enough away that they were not worried. "Do you remember the storm the night I arrived in Hot Springs?" Zelda asked. "How everyone said it was strange that I had brought it." "I remember." Vincent slipped his arm around her waist. "Seems like another lifetime." "It was. I was a different person then. Scared of everything, especially myself. She turned to look at him. You changed me, Vincent. You and this place and our life together. You made me believe I deserved good things. You always deserved them. You just needed someone to show you that. He kissed her forehead, a gesture as familiar as breathing after all these years. I was the lucky one, Zelda. Lucky that you walked off that stagecoach. Lucky that you agreed to work for me. Lucky that you said yes when I asked you to marry me. Every day with you has been a gift. The storm was closer now, the wind picking up, carrying the scent of rain. But Zelda was not afraid. Storms were just weather, not omens. Bad luck was just circumstances, not curses. And she was just a woman who had found love against all odds, who had built a beautiful life in the Wild West with a man who believed in her when no one else did. Come on, Vincent said, taking her hand. Let us go inside before we get soaked. They went into the house together, closing the door against the storm. Inside, it was warm and bright, filled with the sounds of their children talking and laughing. This was home. This was everything. And the curse, if it had ever truly existed, was nothing but a memory, broken long ago by a cowboy's kiss and a frightened woman's courage to hope. In the years that followed, life continued its steady march forward. Daniel married a sweet girl from town named Emma, and they gave Zelda and Vincent their first grandchildren. Sarah went east to college, something almost unheard of for a ranch girl, but she had inherited her father's determination and her mother's quiet strength. She came back with a teaching degree and opened a school in Hot Springs, educating a new generation of children. Thomas took after his father in temperament and stayed on the ranch, finding joy in the same work that had sustained the Walker family for decades. The ranch passed to Daniel eventually, though Vincent continued to work the land well into his 60s, unable to completely let go of the life he had built. Zelda remained by his side through it all, his partner in every sense of the word. They grew old together, their hair silver, their hands gnarled with age but still reaching for each other. They watched their grandchildren grow, saw the world change around them as the old ways gave way to new. The Wild West became less wild, more settled, but the land remained the same, vast and beautiful and unforgiving. On a warm evening in early autumn, when Zelda was 73 and Vincent 75, they sat together on their porch as they had done countless times before. The sun was setting, painting the sky in familiar colors, and the air was filled with the sounds of family. Their children and grandchildren had gathered for Sunday dinner, a tradition they maintained whenever possible. Vincent held Zelda's hand, his grip still strong despite his age. "Tell me something," he said. "Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you had gotten off that stagecoach in a different town, if someone else had hired you?" Zelda thought about it, then shook her head. "No, I think I was always meant to end up here with you. Call it fate or luck or divine providence, but this was always where I was supposed to be." "I like to think so too." He smiled, the same smile that had first made her heart flutter over 50 years ago. "I love you, Zelda Walker. I have loved you since the day you walked into my life, and I will love you until my last breath. And I love you. You saved me, Vincent. You gave me a life worth living. We saved each other," he said, as he always did. "That is what love does." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their family, listening to the familiar sounds of the ranch. Cattle lowing, horses nickering, the wind whispering through the grass. The same sounds that had surrounded them for decades, the soundtrack of their life together. As the sun finally slipped below the horizon, and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Zelda thought about the frightened young woman who had arrived in Hot Springs so long ago. She thought about the curse she had believed in, the fear that had ruled her life, the loneliness that had been her constant companion. And she thought about the cowboy who had looked past all of that and seen only a woman who needed a chance, who had offered her work and respect and eventually love, who had kissed her and somehow, in that simple act, had broken every spell that bound her. Magic did exist, she decided. Not the dark magic of curses and superstition, but the real magic of love and trust and two people choosing each other day after day, year after year. That was the strongest magic of all, and it had transformed her life in ways she could never have imagined. Vincent squeezed her hand gently, and she squeezed back, a silent conversation that needed no words. They had been together so long that they could communicate in touches and glances, in the comfortable silence of old love. Inside the house, someone started playing the piano and voices rose in song. Their granddaughter Lily, Daniel's youngest, came running out to the porch. "Grandma, Grandpa, come inside. We are singing and Mama says we need you." Vincent stood slowly, helping Zelda to her feet. Together, they walked inside to join their family, their children and grandchildren, the legacy of their love made flesh. The house was full of light and warmth and music, and as Zelda looked around at the faces she loved most in the world, she felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her. This was what she had been given. This beautiful, imperfect, absolutely perfect life. She caught Vincent's eye across the room and he winked at her, making her smile. After all these years, he could still make her feel like a young woman in love. That, she thought, was its own kind of magic. The evening wore on, filled with laughter and stories and the comfortable chaos of family. Later, much later, after everyone had gone home or to bed, Zelda and Vincent prepared for sleep in the bedroom they had shared for over 50 years. "Another good day," Vincent said, settling into bed beside her. "The best kind of day," Zelda agreed, snuggling against his side, her head on his shoulder. "Surrounded by family filled with love. That is all that matters in the end, not the size of your herd or how much land you own. Just the people you love and who love you back." He kissed the top of her head. "You taught me that, you know. I did no such thing, you always knew it. Maybe, but you made it real. You gave me a reason to build something that mattered." They drifted off to sleep in each other's arms, as they had done countless nights before. And if anyone had asked Zelda in that moment whether she believed in curses, she would have laughed and said no. Because how could she believe in curses when she was living proof that love could overcome anything? That a frightened girl and a steady cowboy could build something beautiful together in the wild spaces of New Mexico. The curse, if it had ever existed, was nothing but a story now. A tale she sometimes told her grandchildren about how she once believed she was unlucky, and how their grandfather had shown her otherwise. They would listen with wide eyes, then declare that Grandpa must have been very brave to kiss someone who thought she was cursed. And Zelda would smile and agree, because it was true. Vincent had been brave, but more than that, he had been kind and patient and willing to see past her fears to the woman underneath. That had made all the difference. Years later, when both Vincent and Zelda had passed peacefully in their sleep within months of each other, their children gathered to remember them. They spoke of how deeply their parents had loved each other, how that love had been the foundation of everything good in their lives. They told stories and shed tears and celebrated lives well lived. And in Hot Springs, New Mexico, people still spoke of the Walkers, the family who had helped build the town and contributed so much to the community. They remembered Zelda Walker as a kind woman who always had time for those in need, and Vincent Walker as an honest man who treated everyone fairly. The old stories about curses and bad luck faded into legend, then into nothing. What remained was the truth, the simple and profound truth that had shaped two lives and created a legacy that would continue for generations. Love had been their magic. Love had been their salvation. And in the end, love had been enough. The Walking W Ranch continued under Daniel's capable management, then passed to his son, and would eventually pass to his children. The land endured, as land does, witness to the passage of time, and the stories played out upon it. But the greatest story, the one that mattered most, was the story of a superstitious bride who believed she was cursed and the cowboy who kissed her and showed her otherwise. It was a story about faith conquering fear, about love breaking down walls, about two people finding each other against all odds and building something beautiful together. It was a Wild West love story, full of hardship and hope, struggle and triumph. It was a story that proved that sometimes the only magic you need is the courage to believe in happiness and someone willing to take the journey with you. And it was a story with a happy ending, the kind where two people live out their days together, surrounded by love, leaving behind a legacy that would last long after they were gone. The kind of ending that made every trial worthwhile, every tear worth shedding, every moment of fear worth facing. Because in the end, Zelda Vaughn Walker learned what her grandmother never could. That curses only have the power you give them. That love is stronger than any spell. And that sometimes, all it takes to break free is one person who believes in you enough to help you believe in yourself. The sun set over the New Mexico mountains one last time on this story, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, the colors of promise and hope. And somewhere in the vastness of that beautiful, harsh landscape, the echo of their love remained, a testament to the power of human connection and the magic of two hearts beating as one. This was their story. This was their truth, and it was complete.